my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt-Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place for women to come together to share their childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from women all over the world. This episode is sponsored by Earth Mama Angel Baby. Earth Mama Angel Baby provides safe, hospital-recommended natural herbal products to support you through the entire journey of childbirth, from pregnancy through postpartum recovery, breastfeeding, and baby care. At the end of this episode, I'll be talking to Jenna Edwards about her experience using Earth Mama Angel Baby's products after her recent C-section. Today's guest is Jen McLellan. Jen is coming on the show to talk about her experience with pregnancy and childbirth as a plus-size mom. In addition to just her own experience, she's done a ton of research and has even created a really awesome guide for a plus-size mom. So she's super informed, and her episode is just really moving and inspiring. So I think you'll really enjoy it. I just wanted to remind everyone to remember to sign up for the email newsletter, and to also say that I've started adding a little fun thing at the end of the newsletters where I just share something that I'm loving right now, which I think will be a cool way to give people a little bit more insight into me. I know these episodes aren't about me at all, and I don't really want them to be, but people ask me a lot, that they want to know more about, the host of the Birth Hour. So I'm trying to make those email newsletters a little bit more personal. You can sign up for those at thebirthhour.com right there on the bottom of the homepage. All right, let's get to today's episode. Hey, Jen, welcome to the Birth Hour. Thanks for coming on today to share your birth story.
I'm super excited to be here, Bren. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, let's start off by having you just tell us a little bit about you and your family.
My name is Jen McLellan, and I write a blog called Plus Size Mommy Memoirs. So I'm really excited to be here to share my birth story, which is why I'm a blogger. And I have a wonderful and supportive husband, Chris, and my son, Braden, who just turned 6 last week. I can't believe it.
Oh, man, off to school.
First grade already, somehow.
Wow. I'm kind of terrified of that. My daughter's almost 5, so I've got one more year, but all right. Well, let's talk about finding out you were pregnant and what those first weeks were like, starting to research what your pregnancy was going to be like and planning for your birth.
Sure. I found out I was pregnant using one of the pregnancy tests that actually says pregnant or not pregnant. And I was so tired of seeing the not pregnants that I almost didn't believe my eyes when I saw pregnant. My husband works nights, so I was all alone. And I was so excited, and I actually called him, and he was in the middle of a work review. So his boss took pity on him, and he was quite in shock. I feel sorry for the poor guy. I hear these stories of women doing these elaborate things to surprise their partners, and I called mine in the middle of a review. But anyways, after that, I went online, which I think a lot of us do now once we find out we're pregnant. Only I'm a plus-size woman. I weighed 299 pounds when I found out I was pregnant. And I went online, and it wasn't all roses and sunshine and congratulations. It was a lot of, you'll develop gestational diabetes, you'll have a cesarean birth. I even read comments that I was a horrible person for wanting to become a mom as a fat woman. And I think it was doubly hard because I was alone that night reading these things. But I somehow in my head was just like, this is not how I'm starting things off. I'm really going to come from a place of feeling good about my body. But it was hard to have those messages and that you kind of tucked in the back of my head of things that I had read that I really wasn't prepared to read. So that was kind of a tough start, I'd say.
So reading all of those negative things, what did you end up kind of going towards to find answers that would be more what you were looking for?
I've always been a bigger person my whole life, and I really haven't allowed that to hold me back. So I wasn't going to allow it to. I had a mother who told my sister and I our whole lives how amazing natural childbirth was. And it was pretty much, like in my head, I knew that that's the type of birth I wanted. So I went to the resources that many of us do, like Ina May's books. And I had a doctor who I felt comfortable being in the stirrups with. So I didn't research other care providers right away. I just thought, oh, I'll go to my normal OB. She's nice. I've had her for years. And she was fine with the fact that I am, the obese mom. I was 30. So she's like, well, I'm glad, you're 30, so you're younger, and, be more concerned about your age than your weight. But it wasn't anything like, you've got this, or, let's work on keeping you on track to be as healthy as possible. It was more like, okay, well, we'll just kind of follow down this path together and see where it leads. So the changing point for me was 5 months into my pregnancy when I was doing water aerobics with a friend. We'd go 3 times a week and do water aerobics together, which I absolutely loved. And she's like, I hired a doula, as we're like doing our water aerobic stretches. And I'm like, what's a doula? And I think I kind of knew what a doula was because I had watched The Business of Being Born. And so I was like, I want a doula. That sounds fabulous. I got to learn a little bit more. So my husband and I interviewed the same doula our friend had hired. And she said, so you want a natural childbirth? And why are you with this OB in this hospital? And I said, I'm high risk because of my size. She's like, who told you that you're high risk? I was like, well, I just assumed because everything I'd read online, I think was still there. And she's like, you don't have gestational diabetes. You don't have preeclampsia. You don't have anything that would indicate that you're high risk. You're working out. You're eating really healthy. You should consider a home birth if you're so determined on a natural childbirth. And my husband was more like, and I was like, no, I didn't trust my body and what my body was capable of doing. I was really, really concerned. So it was the doula who said, have you considered the midwifery model of care? And encouraged us to look at 2 different hospital midwifery programs. And the first one we went to was at our county hospital. And I remember when I got pregnant thinking, oh, at least I have good insurance so I won't have to give birth at Denver Health. And then before I knew it, I was at Denver Health interviewing their midwives, and absolutely my husband and I fell in love with this midwife, Eliza. She just was just like, yeah, you're healthy, you're doing these great things. If you want a natural childbirth, we will be here to support you. And it just changed everything. My appointments went from 15 minutes to 45 minutes of Eliza touching my body in a way, as a plus-size woman, my body had never been touched by a care provider. And I say that she touched my body with compassion. And I, was still going online, unfortunately, and reading things, and read that I was going to have a really big baby because big girls have big babies. And she smiled and she's like, that's what your hips are for. And when my son would kick her during exams, she would giggle, and she answered everything evidence-based, and yet still made everything feel just warm and fuzzy at the same time. I think it's a gift that midwives have. They provide us with our options and informed consent while still making us feel like we're goddesses at the same time. So it was just care and treatment that I had never experienced as a fat person by a care provider, and it was amazing.
That's awesome that you were able to find that with not too much looking around in your area.
Yeah.
I'm sure like a lot depends on your city. And are there any ways for people to know like what hospitals might be more plus size friendly for taking care of pregnant women?
I think it's more individual care providers than actual facilities. I think it can be hard. I thought, maybe since my doula says home birth and I want hospital, maybe a birth center would be a good in-between. But here in Colorado, our birth centers have BMI restrictions. So there are some places that do have restrictions on where you can give birth as a woman of size, and that can be really off-putting. It can kind of set your pregnancy and birth journey off on kind of this, there is something different, which, there are a little bit of increased risk, but it doesn't mean that you can't have the type of birth that you want to have as long as you're doing everything within your power to have a healthy pregnancy. But really, asking asking questions to any provider, whether it's a doula or a midwife or even a chiropractor as you're interviewing them. I think one great question is just, what is your experience working with women of size? And I think when you sit back and listen to the answer, a lot can be shared of, where are they coming from with their answers. It's something that's, oh, well, a lot of women I work with, have gestational diabetes and da 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 da. Or, well, I work with people on a case-by-case basis and we'll be following you and supporting you. I mean, it becomes pretty evident who is size-friendly and who isn't.
Right.
I mean, we'll talk about this more at the end, but I have now, because of my experience and becoming a childbirth educator, resources, and I have a list of 15 questions people can ask. But I mean, it is very evident even in the beginning of my story, as you point out, hiring a size-friendly care provider, even though my OB was fine, hiring that person who started to make me believe in my body as much as she believed in mine was a real turning point for me. And I found that for countless women who I've supported.
Yeah, I think I hear time and again with all moms too that it's so important to just have that good feeling and connection and follow your intuition when you're interviewing your care provider. And you kind of know pretty early on whether you're a good fit or not. And it's just whether you choose to seek out someone else or just say, oh, this will be good enough,
Yeah, and I think we as women especially feel like, oh, well, you can't fire your care provider, or you're sometimes like, oh, well, this is just, it's good enough. And I feel so thankful for you and your work and your podcast and so many others of us that are saying, no, good enough is not enough. You need to feel completely supported and that you found the right match. Just like dating or looking for a home or whatever it is, we fight so hard for what we want in so many other aspects of our lives, whether it's planning a wedding or whatever, and we don't put as much into giving birth. But podcasts like yours and so many other people are trying to normalize things for us once again, because these are our bodies and our bodies know what to do.
Definitely. All right, let's talk a little bit more about just how your pregnancy went in general, how you were feeling, and what things you did to take care of yourself.
I really ate healthier than I had probably ever. Something, shifted with me. I had this responsibility to not only care for myself, but to care for this baby. And I ate like a watermelon a week. I craved watermelon like nobody's business, as opposed to other things that I thought I'd be craving. I was craving those healthier, natural foods because I was eating them. And fruit was starting to taste like candy. Frozen bean cherries were like the most amazing treat in the world. And sure, I still loved salt and vinegar chips, but it wasn't as much. I was learning to approach eating and nourishment in a different way. Water aerobics, loved it. Can't speak highly enough about water aerobics. I lost weight throughout my pregnancy. It wasn't anything I was trying to do, but it's not uncommon for plus size women to lose weight during their pregnancy, especially if you're making big shifts in how you care for your body. So that was different. It was a little hard because, remember, I was doing water aerobics with my friend, and everyone would ask her, oh, how far along were you? And then they'd ask me, oh, how much weight have you lost? And I'm like, I'm pregnant too. But my body was changing, and I was pregnant with a boy, so I was pretty much only carrying in my belly. I had a little bit of morning sickness, but other than that, my body just loved being pregnant. I glowed. I felt amazing, and I think a lot of that had to do with really taking good care of my body. I also went to prenatal yoga, which I was nervous. I knew I'd be the biggest person in the room and that I wouldn't be able to do a lot of what the other women could do, but the instructor was so lovely, and downward dog I know isn't hard for many, but for me it was a little challenging holding the position, and she just gently brought me a chair and said, here, let's augment this. And before I knew it, I was like leaning half upside down, doing some wonky thing, because we were working together to augment things and for me to really work with my body better and learning breathing techniques that were so helpful for birth as well. So I think for me, it was putting myself in situations that could have been, like putting on a bathing suit can be harder for people of all sizes, but just knowing that, hey, I'm not just doing this for me, but I'm also doing this for my pregnancy. It really helped me to push myself even further out of my comfort zone, and in the end made me really appreciate my body and love it even more.
I love that. So it sounds like overall pregnancy really agreed with you.
Yes. Yes, it did. I was one of those lucky ones.
Great. Well, let's get into your birth story. So what were some of the first signs that you were going into labor?
So because I had switched care providers, there was a question on my dates. But right around 37 weeks, which I think was probably closer to 36, I woke up at like 1:30 in the morning on August 24th, 2010, and felt all like slimy downstairs. And I was like, what's going on? Like, we didn't have sex. Like, what is, it was just kind of like, this is really early. What's happening? And I went to the bathroom, and of course it was my bloody show. And then I got all excited. And I live in Colorado, so we have basements. So I went downstairs to the basement where my computer was. And I just thought, oh, this is fun. I'm going to send an email to my mom and my doula and let them know things have started. And I sent the email, and then I stood up. And I thought, whoa, things are wet. And I thought that I peed myself because I was in such denial that this could be my water, like that this could be happening now. It felt too early. And there were so many signs that I see now. Like the few days beforehand, I thought I had food poisoning because I was going to the bathroom all the time. And I cleaned our bedroom from like floor to ceiling and was moving the dressers around, but I was not prepared. I thought for sure as a first-time mom I would go post dates. So I went upstairs and lay next to my husband, and within a half an hour I had contractions. There was no like Braxton Hicks for a while, or just immediately my body was like, okay, let's have a baby today. So it was kind of a shock.
So did you have instructions from your midwife about like when to come in or what to look for and things like that?
I don't even know we'd really gotten quite to that point. And I was really, really in denial that this was actual labor. I thought that things would just pitter out. We had thankfully just gotten the car seat installed, but other than that, we're not ready. There was no hospital bag packed. I remember the breastfeeding was really important to me in my breastfeeding book. I was just starting to dive into because I felt like I'll save this towards the end. But I literally went into our dining room and started walking around the dining room table. And I wouldn't stop because every time I stopped, I would get an intense contraction, like if I would try to change positions. And I had forgotten we took a short natural childbirth class that when you change positions, you often get a more intense contraction, and then you'll go back into your own rhythm. Well, I was in such denial and had forgotten that gem of wisdom that I walked for like 4 hours. And it was not smart at all. We really should have called the doula, but it was also in the middle of the night, and I'm a really courteous person, and I didn't want to wake her up, which is ridiculous. I think the main thing was really denial. I was in denial that this could be real, and I didn't even think to call the hospital because I just thought, oh, this will stop. But by 5 a.m., and my husband and I were timing things, and it was, I would say every 5 minutes or so I was having a contraction, 5 to 7 minutes. And then around 5 a.m., it was like, so yeah, I don't really want to start this over again. Like, I'm ready. Let's have a baby sometime within the next, day or so. So we called the doula, and the doula was immediately like, get her in the bath, let her sit, because I just refused to sit. So my husband put me in the bath. She said, get her some food and get her some fluids. And he brought me some toast. I didn't want to eat, but that was what we compromised on, and some water. And he said, I'll never forget, he said, can I get you anything else? And I said, I'd like an epidural because I was scared and I wasn't really writing my contractions. I was just still in denial. And so then a little while later, the doula said, do you want me to come to your home or the hospital, or are we going to the hospital now? And I just said hospital. I didn't feel like I was where I needed to be at the time. So we got in the car and we got to the hospital by like 9 a.m. And so everything had started around 2 a.m. and now it's 9 a.m. And I walked in and my husband was like, "You sure you want me to park the car, or we can go together?" And I was like, "Nope, I'm going in on my own. You park the car." And I was, determined to walk in on my own. And I was getting everything, checked in, and I saw my doula. And she came up to me and I had a contraction, and she took one of my hands and held it in hers and took her other hand and put her index finger on my forehead and just stroked it up and down and told me to breathe. And I kid you not, it was like I had just received an epidural. All of a sudden, all these muscles that had been so tense for like the past 5 hours just relaxed. I think my body just was telling me, you need to be around women and you need to be where you want to be to feel safe and secure, which for me at that time really was the hospital. I also believe I was walking for hours because I think Braden, my son, was probably in a wonky position and I needed to turn him. But I felt better once we had got there to the hospital. Unfortunately, the people in triage were not very kind to me. That was the only time I really felt kind of mistreated, and it felt like it was because I was an obese mom who wanted a natural childbirth who had a doula with her. It just felt they weren't very nice to me at all. They even tried to separate me from my husband and my doula to go upstairs to labor and delivery. It was not okay. But once we got upstairs, we were greeted by this amazing midwife named Moggy. And Eliza, my prenatal care midwife, had told Moggy about me because Moggy was a plus-size midwife. And she had told her, like, I have this plus-size client and she has some concerns, but, she's great or whatever. And Moggy met me at the door and she took both of my hands within hers and said, smiling, "I have heard so much about you and I'm so happy you're here." And then I just walked into the room, and it was like I had just walked into this like cocoon of love and support, and it was amazing. I didn't have very many expectations for what this was all going to be like as a first-time mom. I just knew I was bound and determined not to have any interventions because I was so afraid that if I ended up with an epidural, obviously people would be having to move my body for me, and that I would probably end up with a cesarean. And being a larger person, major surgery was terrifying. And also I had my mom all those years telling me how incredible natural childbirth is. So I was, had that birth plan in my hand. And everyone in that room, my midwife and I ended up having the same nurse the entire time, were so gracious and so respectful of me and my body and my wishes that I was just, it's sad, but I feel like I was lucky. And I wish that more people could have that safety net and that safe space for birth if that's what they desire. But my doula tried to get me to lay into bed once we got upstairs, and I was not happy with that idea at all. But everyone was concerned that I was dehydrated and tired because I'd been walking for hours. So I rested for a little bit, but then I just wanted to move. I felt better on the toilet. The toilet's an amazing place to labor. I was laboring quite well, moving around, and I was checked, and I thought things were progressing quite well fast, and they weren't at all. I'd only gone from a 4 to a 5, and I was pretty devastated. And my doula was sweet, and she's like, "You did great work. Like that's huge, and you're doing the really great." And I find now that it was my body was holding off, because before we had left from the hospital, we called my mom in California, my parents, and my mom wanted to try to be there for the birth, and she had booked a one-way flight. And I think my body was really waiting for my mom to be there. And right around 2:00 in the afternoon, I was laboring in the tub by then, and my doula had been teaching me how to ride my contractions like waves. And all of a sudden, I see my mom. I'm like getting emotional. I see my mom. She just put on hand sanitizer and she smelled. So the first thing I said to my mom was, "You smell," after the poor thing had been on a one-way flight, not knowing if she would see her first grandchild from her firstborn daughter be born or not. But I just knew she was there, and my body immediately was like, okay, let's get the show on the road. And I immediately went into transition. So I didn't really get to talk to her at all. My body just took over, and it was really intense, but I knew that she was there. My in-laws had just been visiting from New Mexico, and so they were getting right back in the car and headed back, but my mom had made it in time, and I knew that it was time. And they had moved me onto the birth ball, and I was never hooked up to monitors except for in triage. Not a lot of checks as well, just whenever we thought things had really progressed. And I was sitting on the birth ball, and everyone knew it was getting close. And I was looking at my mom and my doula and my husband. They were sitting on the opposite side from the bed from where I was sitting. And I just looked at them and I said, I'm having a baby. It was like this euphoric experience, which natural childbirth allows for that. And they just started laughing at me and nodding their heads. And they're like, yes, you're having a baby. And I think for me, it was this realization of I was ready. And I had spent, most of the labor until we got into the hospital just like, this can't be time. This can't be it. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And then it was like, okay, I am ready to become a mother. And then my midwife said, okay, climb on the bed on your knees. And I had spent a lot of time reading and learning about different laboring positions, but never really thought about the position to give birth in. And it came from that fear of being so exposed. What's if I can't hold my legs up for long? What's if the stirrups are really uncomfortable because my legs are larger? I don't want everyone seeing my fat body on display. A lot of fears around that. But my midwife had me on my knees, and they kind of propped the bed up so I could lean forward if I wanted. And my husband stood at the top of the bed so I could just look at him in the wall, and had no idea that the circus had entered behind us, because Brayden was early, even though I was reassured the whole time that, oh, it's fine, because everyone knew there was no stopping the labor at this point. And I just remember feeling strong and feeling secure, and everyone in that room was so gracious, and they kept a sheet over my bottom, so I still felt covered. And then when I would push, they'd just bring the sheet down, but in between contractions, they'd pull the sheet back up. And it was, I think to them, it might have just been like, oh, this will be nice to make her feel good. But to me, they treated me with such dignity and respect of my body that I will forever be thankful. But pushing was definitely different. I had gotten used to labor and contractions and riding my contractions like a wave, and had a sense of control, and never once thought of pain medication or let's get this over with. But pushing was like, oh, this burns. This is like, can we go back to labor pain? But all of a sudden, the midwife said to my husband, because he wanted to catch our son, that was part of our birth plan, she said, do you want gloves? And he said, no, but can I change my shirt? And in my head, I was thinking, wait, you want to change your shirt? Are you kidding me? I'm about to birth your baby and you want to change your shirt? But while we were laboring at home, after they had asked me to eat, I got sick all over a pile of brand new shirts my husband had just bought. And so he was wearing one that didn't get messed up to the hospital. So he wanted to make sure his shirt didn't get dirty. I think he was as in shock and not knowing what was going on and not prepared to become a parent as I was, and just kind of like, what can I control? I need a new shirt. So he put on a new shirt, and I was thinking in my head, like, this is ridiculous. But then I was also thinking, the midwife told him to hurry. So this is going to be over soon. And pushing was not the sensation that I was able to control. And I was kind of holding back, and my doula could tell. And so she looked at me, and she just said, she was giving counter pressure on my back, but then she came around and looked at me and just simply said, listen to your body. And as a person of size who had been told most of my life that my body is unacceptable, my body is wrong, my body needs to be changed, the idea that I had to let go and give control to my body and kind of turn off that brain that had been controlling labor the whole time except for transition was scary, but I knew it had to happen. And I did. And I kind of let go. And I trusted my body to take over. And it was the most magnificent and incredible experience in my life because I had never trusted my body. I had never fully loved and embraced my body. And here I was, for the first time in my life, learning to love my body while giving birth to a baby that my body had grown. And it was so incredibly transformative and powerful. And before I knew it, after 30 minutes of pushing, my son was being born. He had the cord wrapped around his neck. So my midwife gently pushed my husband out of the way and removed the cord from around Braden's neck, and then brought him back in so he could catch our son. And Braden was passed from between my legs into my arms. And I remember the first thought being just amazement that I had created such a perfect, beautiful being. And then a little concerned because Braden was, well, kind of blue. So they immediately cut the cord, which that was the only thing I wish could have been a little different. But he was early and they were concerned. So they brought him over and gave him oxygen. And I think for a lot of moms that would have been scary. But for me, I was high as a kite on natural childbirth. I was just like, bye. Like, I don't know, like looking back on that, I'm like, how was I so just like, whatever the baby needs? And I was just, I was so strong and powerful and felt just amazing. All of these endorphins and oxytocin just coursing through my body. And I could see Braden, and you could tell people weren't freaking out. So I think I knew that things were going to be okay. I'll just never forget that feeling of how it changed in that moment in my life, changed forever, about how I was going to feel about my body for the rest of my life. And then also becoming a mother to this amazing, sweet, beautiful, charismatic little boy. And just, you know, it was the most incredible lesson and experience of my life. And I feel so fortunate that through every step of it, I was treated with so much love and respect. And I'll never forget, after Braden was fine and he was back with me and I was laying on my back and my doula was holding my hand on one side, and then my midwife came around and held my hand on the other side. And my mother happened to take a picture of this moment. But my midwife told me that it was an honor to be at my birth. And I'll never forget that. And I'll never forget that, because that is not what I hear from so many women who don't have anywhere near the birth experience or are treated with as much respect as I was. And I'm so gracious that that midwife happened to be my midwife that night, because she's the reason, and my doula and that birth is the reason why I now have dedicated my life to advocating for women of size through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, because I know what it can be like. I wanted a natural childbirth. You don't need to have a natural childbirth to be treated with dignity and respect or any of that stuff, but I know what it can be like. I know what birth can be like for people of any size, and I know the reality of what it's often like. And that, to me, is why I fight so hard, because it can change everything, not only your birth, but for the rest of your life if you connect with the right team. So that's my journey and how it just changed me forever.
It's so beautiful. You have me all teary-eyed over here too.
I wasn't expecting to cry. I think, you know, his birthday was just last week too, so it's also very fresh right now.
Well, you're in good company. I would say almost every mom tears up at some point during her story, but
I'm sure.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And now I just want to kind of get into some of the resources that you recommend for other plus size moms and how they can find you and find help from what you've learned.
Sure. So after I settled into motherhood, although I don't think we ever do that, but once I started sleeping a bit, I started a blog because I really struggled to find images of plus size pregnant women. I struggled to find positive stories. I wanted there to be a different narrative. I wanted my story to be out there. I knew I couldn't have been the first, plus size mom to ever give birth on her knees and have a natural childbirth, but it was really hard to find more natural childbirth stories or just positive outcome stories for women of size. So I started the blog and ended up starting a website, plussizebirth.com, to house a ton of resources, everything that I had looked for, searched for, or wanted to know about, from a list of size-friendly doulas to size-friendly care providers and so on and so forth. And I ended up getting certified as a childbirth educator because I wanted the opportunity to talk to birth professionals, not just moms, but birth professionals, about how to be size friendly and how to support plus size moms. So it feels weird just to advocate for myself and my resources, but I've dedicated the past 5+ years to creating this safe space. I have a Facebook page, the same name as my blog, Plus Size Mommy Memoirs, with over 177,000 plus size moms supporting one another, whether they're trying to conceive or adoptive moms or moms of multiples or, all different moms. Because I think that as plus size women, there aren't that many differences, but there are enough. And a lot of them are things that are embarrassing to talk to average size moms about, like a belly that looks more like a B than a D, and when will I start to show, and all of those types of things that are a little bit different and a little bit harder to have the conversations with. I really hope that people who are plus size and pregnant or thinking about becoming moms will tap into those resources, because it has definitely been helpful for a lot of women who I've supported.
Yeah, I think that the community that you've created and all those resources you've compiled really stand out because there is so little out there, like you found when you were pregnant. So I'm really grateful to all of your work that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks again, Jen. And you've shared your website, but what other social media and things like that can people use to connect with you?
Sure. I actually created just recently a guide called My Plus Size Pregnancy Guide. It answers every single question that I get asked every day, like where can I find cute maternity clothes and how can I find a size-friendly care provider, to the questions I wish more people would ask, like what really are the increased risks and how can I reduce my risks and what's a doula? So I wanted to offer your following and anyone listening, my guide is $17, but I wanted to give a $5 off coupon code of birth hour for anyone who wants to get their hands on this guide. I think it's a really helpful resource that I'm really proud of. So there's that. And then on social media, Plus Size Mommy Memoirs on Facebook, and then Instagram is Plus Mommy. But if you just go to plussizebirth.com, you can connect. I'm everywhere, all over social media, but the main place is Facebook. And there's a private Facebook group as well, so people can ask questions and connect with other plus size moms without all their friends and family seeing what's posted in their feed. So that's a really great safe space for people to have, be able to talk openly about their questions or concerns. So yeah, those are great places to find me.
Perfect. And the guide would be on your website as well. I'm sure very obvious to find
yes,
there.
on the homepage. There's
Perfect.
a little video.
Okay, great. Well, we will link to all of those things from the show notes page as well. And I'm really grateful to you for your time today and for sharing your story.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you again so much, Jen, for coming on and sharing your experience and all of those awesome resources. If you want to connect with Jen, head over to thebirthhour.com and find her show notes page where we'll link to all of her social media information, the guide that she's offering with the discount, all listed there for you. So just head over there to find that. And now we're going to talk to Jenna about her experience using Earth Mama Angel Baby products, which are today's sponsor. Hi, Jenna. Thanks for coming on the Birth Hour to talk about your Earth Mama Angel Baby products that you've been using. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Bren. Thanks for having me. My name's Jenna Edwards, and I'm a mom of 2 boys, one that I hold in my heart and one that I hold here in my arms. Grayson is my oldest, and he's in heaven now. And Gavin is my rainbow baby, and he was born this past March. He's just now almost 6 months old. He'll be 6 months tomorrow. And yeah, I mean, I've loved the Earth Mama Angel Baby products. I was actually using the soap on myself whenever I was pregnant with Gavin this last time. I love the smells and I love the organic natural products. I tried to cut out anything with bad chemicals while I was pregnant with him, and then especially anything that I was going to use on him once he arrived.
Cool. So I want to especially ask you about using their special salve for C-section scars, since you kind of were in a unique position knowing ahead of time that you were going to have a C-section since Gavin was breech. So did you do some research to find something to use for that, or how did you come across it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I spoke with my doctor after the fact, and she didn't really have anything to recommend other than a standard A&D, ointment cream that's just for healing any kinds of scars. So again, wanting something natural while I was still pregnant with him, and I guess after the 30-week mark was when he flipped to breech, and so I had about 7 weeks knowing he was going to need to be born early at 37 weeks. I was just out shopping actually at a local shop that carried the Earth Mama Angel Baby products, and I saw the Sea Mama Healing Salve there. So at the time, I just snapped a picture of it on my phone. That way I could look it up and read more about it whenever I got home. And then I think I just ended up ordering some online, but I just really liked the ingredients. The smell of it's really nice, and it doesn't go on really greasy. I want to say I was able to start using it maybe 3 to 4 weeks postpartum once the, I don't know what they're called, the sticky sutures finally came off after I went to, I guess, my 2-week post-op visit. She was able to kind of peel the edges off, but wanted them to come off more naturally. So sticky things worked great, but once they were finally off, I was able to start using it. And, a C-section scar, pretty much the whole area is just feels numb for a while the nerves started to get back together. And it really wasn't even that greasy. Every now and then I would use, just to kind of, once I've used a bunch of it, would use a Q-tip just to kind of get more of it out from the jar. But other than that, I would usually just use it on my finger, and I'd use it every morning whenever I got out of the shower. I think it said you can use it up to a couple times a day. It's just with a newborn and all the craziness that comes along with that, it was hard to try to remember to use it more than once a day, but I really, really liked it, and I think it helped heal the scar a lot faster.
And you're still using it now at 6 months?
Yeah, here and there. I don't use it every day any longer. The scar's still a little bit pink in the area, but I think it's gonna be like that for close to a year before it finally starts to fade to a darker line.
Well, I'm glad that worked out for you. Were there any other products that you've been using since he's been born that you wanted to talk about?
Oh my gosh, yes. So the baby bottom balm is the best. Talk about, other than just the smell of it being nice, again, it's not super greasy. I know lots of people rely on the Boudreaux's butt paste or the Desitin stuff, but all that stuff is just so greasy and caked on. And thankfully, Gavin really hasn't really had much of a diaper rash. Every now and then, I always put the baby bottom balm on him at night whenever he's going to bed, because he'll usually stay in a diaper for a good 6 to 7 hours before he wakes up in the morning and needs a change. So I think that really, the bottom balm helps him from getting any kind of diaper rash, or if he goes number 2 more than a couple times in a day and it starts to get kind of red just from all the wipes, then I'll use that on him. But I feel like I've tried almost every other kind of bottom cream for him, and this is by far my favorite. So finally used the last of my big jar, so in 6 months.
Nice, and that's using it every night?
Yep, multiple times a day and every night. So it lasted for 6 months. So
that's super smart to use it preventative. I never really thought about that with my kids. And I guess with some of the other products, they're so strong, you wouldn't want to do that. But this one's so gentle.
And it's so gentle, and it goes on really easily. My mother-in-law gave me this little flat spatula thing too.
Oh my gosh, that thing cracks me up.
I forget what it's called, but it really is. It's nice for, especially now, the quicker diaper changes where he's wiggling and moving all over the place. It really helps to get an even, nice line on him. And again, like the Desitin and stuff like that really gets caked on your fingers. This stuff isn't as bad. You can just kind of rub through it. Of course, always wash your hands afterwards, but sometimes if you can't quite get to the bathroom right away, it's not as bad having that stuff on your fingers as some of the other kinds. But yeah, other than that, I love the massage oil. We haven't quite gotten into the routine that I wanted to with doing a nightly massage, but we still do the massages here and there. So their baby oil is really nice. It's, again, even though it's an oil, it's not too super greasy, so he's not crazy slippery afterwards. And every night after we do our bath, we use the Angel Baby lotion on his skin. I guess before he was born, I bought the nonsense kind, just because I didn't want to be using too much scented stuff on him in the beginning. But I really love the vanilla orange lotion. I think the soap that I was using was the grapefruit before he was born, the soap that I was using on myself, but the soap that we have for him is the vanilla orange, and it smells delicious.
Yeah, my whole family loves the smell of that stuff. Like, I've started using it a lot, and then my husband was like, can you get me some of that stuff? So now I think he has some at the office. Nice. But it's definitely not like a baby smell, and it's very easy on the nose.
I know, yeah. I definitely don't love the just baby powder smell, so it's nice that they have some other stuff.
Cool. Well, we'll have to link to the video of Gavin getting his baby massage too. He's kind of famous on the Birth Hour Instagram account. Yeah, so cute. Well, thank you so much, Jenna, for sharing that with us, and we can't wait to have you on soon to share your birth stories.
I can't wait to share them with everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again, Jen and Jenna, and thank you all for listening. And we'll be back next week with another episode on Tuesday. In the meantime, be sure to sign up for the email newsletter at thebirthhour.com. Right there on the homepage at the bottom of the page, you can just enter in your email and be all signed up so you can stay in touch. And you can connect with me also on Instagram at thebirthhour. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com to sign up for our newsletter. And if you really like the show, please subscribe and leave a review in iTunes. I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you've been listening to another episode of The Birth Hour. Thanks again, and see you next week.